Standing by now to join us as he does on Mondays every week is our good friend Joe DiGenova, our legal analyst. Joe, I want to talk about the Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder. He testifies before Congress back when the AP thing blew up about whether or not he thought that was a good idea and would he ever be in favor of going after the phone records, the mail records of reporters. You know, he'd recused himself from the AP thing at that point, and this is what he said in congressional testimony.
With regard to the potential prosecution of the press for the disclosure of material, that is not something that I've ever been involved in, heard of, or would think would be a wise policy.
That's what he said before Congress. And then we later learned that in going after James Rosen of Fox News, which wasn't known as he was testifying. It wasn't known at that time. But when he did go after James Rosen, he signed off on it, and he signed off on a search warrant which basically called James Rosen an aider, an abettor, and a co-conspirator. So has he lied under oath to Congress?
I don't know whether he's technically lied under oath, but he has, at a minimum, misled Congress either intentionally or unintentionally, and he has lost all credibility as Attorney General. I like Eric. I think he's a very nice guy, but I think at this point in his tenure as Attorney General, he can no longer serve effectively. He cannot appear before Congress without being subject to the kind of scrutiny and questioning of his veracity that really makes it untenable for any cabinet officer, but especially for the Attorney General, whose moral authority is so important to the effective enforcement of the law. I think he's lost that, and I think what they're going to do is, as they nominate James Comey to be the new FBI director, they're going to suggest that Eric step aside and that they appoint a new Attorney General at the same time they appoint a new FBI director.
But can we get sort of burrow down on that real question? Because he tells Congress, I think this is a bad idea. I don't believe in prosecuting reporters. But when you put out a search warrant that calls somebody an aider, an abettor, and a co-conspirator, aren't you basically telling the judge that you think, and by the way, they said he was a flight risk, aren't you basically telling the judge that you are potentially going to prosecute this person? That's how you get the information that you're seeking in the first place.
Absolutely, that's what they were telling the judge. And in fact, they made it very clear that this was a crime. These types of allegations never appear about reporters and search warrants, and that's why the FBI agent and the prosecutors who approved this search warrant should all be fired. And I think it is the basis for the Attorney General responsibly to leave office. I was fascinated by Chris Van Hollen's defense of this activity on Sunday, where he said, and this was unbelievable, they had no intention to prosecute when they got the warrant. Now, what that means is, that means they purposely lied to a federal judge. Now, if Chris Van Hollen, Mr. Smart Aleck from Maryland, thinks that's a good way to conduct law enforcement, that's a good reason for him to not have anything to do with law enforcement. It's clear that they lied to three federal judges, the two who rejected the warrant and the one, Judge Royce Lamberth, who for some reason that I will never understand, approved this warrant. But it's clear they are now admitting that they knowingly lied to a federal judge, according to Chris Van Hollen. I mean, I couldn't believe that Chris Van Hollen was actually saying this, but he did, and it's on the record, and it is absolutely disgraceful.
Joe DiGenova, you served as an independent counsel once for the Clinton passport file search episode, to jog people's memory of that story, and you were brought in because at the time it was seen that the Justice Department at that point under George Herbert Walker Bush, President Bush, couldn't really be impartial and do an independent study of the situation, especially since it may have even happened in that Department of Justice. Do you see any of these scandals right now, the IRS scandal, the search warrants for reporters scandal, and the Benghazi scandal, do any of those at this point warrant an independent counsel, or do you think Congress can do their job in oversight?
Well, I think if the old statute were still in existence, there would already be at least one independent counsel having been appointed. I don't think there's any question that all three of these scandals meet the threshold requirement for the appointment of a special counsel. The IRS, certainly, the AP false statements to federal judges, James Rosen's case, the false statements to federal judges, and Benghazi clearly establishes criminal behavior in line, and that's why Mr. Pickering has hired Williams and Connolly. He didn't hire Williams and Connolly because he thinks he's not in trouble. But I don't think there's any doubt that there's certainly enough evidence for there to be, because there's a conflict of interest in the Justice Department with all three of these cases, I would like to see Congress proceed a little bit longer before a special counsel is appointed, because remember, once a special counsel is appointed, everything goes into the grand jury and you hear nothing. It will simply disappear. That is not good. These are all public accountability scandals. Every one of these needs to be delved into deeply in a public forum before congressional committees, and that's exactly why it's important that the IRS case particularly proceed publicly with all of these people being forced to give depositions under oath to the House of Representatives.
Joe, I got to follow up on one thing you just said, that Admiral Pickering knows he's in trouble. That's why he's lawyered up. Of course, Admiral Pickering was in charge of the Accountability Review Board that the State Department set up to look at the Benghazi affair. What trouble is he in?
Well, I think there's no question that he submitted false statements in his report to the Department of State and therefore to Congress and to the American people. For example, he claims in the report that the ambassador, Chris Stevens, went to Benghazi without any input and authority from the Department of State in Washington. That is an absolute falsehood. In fact, he was told directly by my partner, Victoria Tenson's client, Greg Hicks, that he went to Benghazi. He, Ambassador Stevens, went there at the direct and unequivocal request of Hillary Clinton to get a permanent mission set up there before the end of the fiscal year and of 2012. And so, therefore, when Pickering put in the report that there was no authority from Washington to go here, that was an absolutely false statement, and Pickering knew it.
So where are we on the whistleblowers? I mean, have you gotten your clearance yet?
We have not received our clearances for top secret. We know that they're working on it because our friends and neighbors are telling us that the FBI showed up and saying, we don't know why we've been asked to do this so quickly, but we're here to ask you about Mr. DiGenova and Ms. Tenson.
Well, then of course now you're in deep trouble, right?
Yes, that's right. But we do not have our top secret security clearances yet. And by the way, if they wanted to give this, they could give us the top secret security clearance on their own word in 24 hours. They've chosen not to do so.
All right, Joe DiGenova, it's always great to have you. Happy Monday to you, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week.